Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor illegally extended his driveway onto my land, regraded it and flooded my property without permits." Living in Malaysia has always been a dream of mine. It is such a beautiful country, and the culture and traditions have always fascinated me. So of course, when I had the opportunity to move there for work, I was extremely ecstatic. When I was told I could bring my significant other, I was even more excited. I did as much research as I could before I moved there, although I already had some basic knowledge about the country. I want to be as prepared as possible while also respecting the country that I was not from. When we finally got there, the neighborhood we moved into was absolutely amazing. We had seen pictures and such beforehand before traveling, but obviously the pictures did not do the neighborhood or properties that much justice. The houses were huge. I was so surprised because they looked nice in the picture, but they did not look that big. Everyone came to introduce themselves almost immediately, and I have to say, it was nice being welcomed in as a foreigner. I know in my home country, we are not as welcoming. When the neighbors that lived next to us came over to introduce themselves, the gentleman, who I assumed to be the husband, let us know that he was going to be doing some renovations on his house and yard and apologized if there was any noise or disturbances that would occur because of it. Sure, I did not really want to deal with noise while trying to adjust to live in a new country, but who did? He was extremely polite about it though, and even gave us a warning, so I did not mind. I could just buy some earplugs. I never asked specifically what renovations he was going to have done, and he also didn't tell me. I guess I should have though, because as soon as the renovation started, I felt like something was off. See, the houses on our street set up higher than the street level. Most, if not all, of the front yards and driveways were at a slope. This guy had plans to flatten out his driveway. Now, where I am living in Malaysia, it is pretty tropical and humid weather, so it rains every day. Usually towards the end of the day, it will rain, so having the slopes is also important because it will allow the water to run into the drainage system in the streets. I decided to confront my neighbor about it and express the concerns of water from his property draining into my yard. His property/house did sit slightly higher than mine, so this could cause my yard to flood pretty rapidly. I went over to his house and explained that I was concerned about his renovation plans for his front yard and driveway. I was very upfront but also friendly and expressed the fact that when it rained, which is every day, the water from his yard would run into my property and flood it. I thought that we were going to be able to have a nice and civil conversation, but I was surprised when I was met with an attitude. He immediately started questioning me, asking why I was prying my nose into his business. He told me that whatever he planned to do with his house was nobody's business but whoever lived there. I told him that while I do technically agree with him, if his plans are going to interfere with other people in the neighborhood, then they have a right to be concerned and voice their opinion, which is exactly what I was doing. He told me that I should mind my own business because as long as he was doing everything legally, then I should not say anything. I knew this conversation was going nowhere, so I gave up. Before I walked away, he called me a duck foreigner and slammed the door shut in my face. I was really upset by this. I did not want to make it seem like I felt entitled or like I was demanding things, but I just did not want damage on my property that was not even my fault. I decided to chat with my girlfriend about the whole incident to see what she had to say, and she made a fairly good point. Why would he randomly mention that he was doing it legally? My girlfriend had a thought that part of his newer and renovated driveway would actually be overlapping the property line. I argued that there is no way because there was a gate that separated the two properties. However, she made a point that he knew better and was taking advantage of my ignorance. I decided to call out a land surveyor and have them come out when I knew this guy was not going to be home. The land surveyor actually confirmed part of my girlfriend's suspicions. Our property line was actually further than we thought, but it was towards the street. So technically, if he did redo his driveway and flattened it out, he would hardly be able to get to it because the piece of land leading up to it belongs to us. Now, of course, we could let him know this and offer to let him use this section of land to get to his driveway, but I was not willing to do that at this point. Instead, I was going to be petty about it, wait until he had already started the project, and then call the city to report that I had some concerns with property boundaries. And that is exactly what I did. My neighbor was pissed because he had to completely stop all of his plans. Not just that, but he could not even continue them because technically he was doing construction work on our property. They were trying to flatten out the piece of land I mentioned before. He was fined by the city for not having the correct certifications, but also we got to finish his project. Meaning we took advantage of the fact that construction had already begun and widened our own driveway. Since this incident, our neighbor has not talked to us nor acknowledged us, but I'm sure it is hard not to notice our now extra large driveway. And yeah, ripe stars, if you ever had to deal with any awful crazy neighbors, then I would really appreciate it if you could share your own story either in the comments or on r/ripe stories on Reddit, where there is a good chance that I will read your story in a future video. In addition, if you have watched until here, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video, because that would help my channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance. Your support is very much appreciated. The next one is titled, Yep, Married. A little backstory: I'm a painter, no, not a house painter, but someone who paints on canvases. I paint landscapes and only landscapes, and I've been doing it for a few years now. I get my paint from a hobby store that has just about everything, and it is a well-known local store that changed hands in the last couple of years. On the day this story is about, I was in my usual cargo shorts, which I wear year-round even when there is snow outside, tennis shoes and a nice pullover shirt, think fancy t-shirt with a collar. Oh, and by the way, I'm like 60-ish, I had not had a haircut in months and also had not shaved in like a week, so I was rather scruffy looking. Think a clean homeless guy with clean clothes, and that is a big thing with my wife, as she insists that I don't leave the house looking like I've lived in my clothes for a week. As you might guess, I'm a messy painter and I tend to get paint on my clothes, so I change into something clean and without any rips or tears before leaving the house. I was looking at some brushes on an end cap, that part of the shelves at each end of the aisle, when this woman clears her throat. Now, I get stuff in my throat and have a rattle sound when clearing, so my brain just filtered out the sound and I moved a little to one side and closer to the end cap in case I was in the way. Once again came that throaty sound like a frog choking on an oversized cricket while trying to sing. This time I look at the source of that sound and find a woman, maybe 5'2", a little thick with a short fake blonde haircut. I think the ladies call it a bob. A cart with some plastic plant foam bricks in it and raised eyebrows. Now, the uniform here is black pants and a store polo shirt of any number of colors. Oh, and each and every employee has a black apron on, except for management. It's a pretty good sized store and the only one of its kind for an hour or two in any direction, so the store monopolizes the region. Cheaper prices can be found in the big city, but that is almost 2 hours away, and by the time you have spent the gas to get there and back, you have not really saved a whole lot. Now that you know the backstory, the scene played out like this. Me is the old gnome looking guy, CL is crazy lady, the assistant manager is Judy, and the manager is Katie. Me, is there something wrong with your throat? I asked a little concerned. CL, no, there's nothing wrong with my throat. What is wrong is you just standing there instead of helping paying customers. Me, I said, instantly recognizing the Karen in the wild from the many tales I've heard over the years. You think that I work here. CL, no duh, I see you in here all the time. I know you work here. I'm in here because I buy things, I said. CL, yeah, and the other day I saw that you got an employee discount, so I absolutely know you work here, so help me find my stuff. With a faint smile, I said, "Stuff? You need to go to the stuff mart." I nearly doubled over with laughter as her brow became a maze of lines as her 2 working brain cells spun crazily inside her cranium trying to figure out stuff mart and whether there actually might be a place called stuff mart or if I was pulling her leg. Then she waved her hand through the air as if clearing it of smoke and said, "Never mind, you help me now." I looked down at my cargo shorts and then said, "Okay, for the sake of the argument, let's say I do work here. Obviously, I'm not wearing the proper uniform, so this must be my day off, and such that would mean I'm not working today. So tell me again, why would I help you if I'm not working today?" CL, "Because you work here," she screeched and stomping her foot. Me, "But don't even the peons get days off when they don't have to work?" And now with a really screeching voice, the crazy lady yells, "If you don't help me right this minute, I'm going to get you fired." And then came the mantra of all Karens, "Get me your manager." I could hear the clippity-clop of dress shoes clattering across the tiled floor at warp speed and knew help was soon to arrive. I reached over and picked up a paintbrush and said, "This is a paintbrush, you know. These fine bristles are all natural and can help bring your painting to life." CL looked at me with wide eyes and a mouth open and prepared for the early arrival of many flying insects should they happen to be landing, and this brought on a 2-foot stomp. What are you babbling about? I want you to find my things," she shouted just as Judy and Katie rounded the corner of an aisle to see what all the shouting was about. Me? "Oh, but where do you suppose they could be?" I feigned innocence. Judy spoke first. "What is going on here?" Before life on this earth could draw a single breath, CL let out a string of, "This stupid worker won't help me, has been rude to me, attacked me with that paintbrush, and I want the manager, and I want him fired for being too stupid to be working. They should have laws about people being too stupid to have jobs. I want my things found, and I want them for free for dealing with such an incompetent imbecile. I know the owner, and he will fire all of you if you don't help me." Judy looked back at me and then covered her mouth with her hand and turned her face to keep from laughing. Katie, who is in her 40s and looks to be in her 20s, suppressed a chuckle and walked right up to me. She ran her finger down my cheek and said, "You know, if you stay a little while, I might take you home with me. We could have a lot of fun, you and I." "What?" cried CL, whose face went beet red, and she took a step back from her cart while Judy ran off, doing her best to not laugh. That sounds like an employee discount I want to explore," I said, seeing the knowing look in Katie's eyes. "Oh my, what is going on here?" CL screamed as though she was watching a murder being committed right in front of her. "Are you serious? You, I want someone to call the owner right now, right this damn minute. This kind of behavior will not be tolerated in this store. I will have you both fired right damn now." Katie and I are about the same height, and when Katie kissed my ear, CL just started hopping around like a mad rabbit, stomping both her feet into the floor. The girl on the register and Judy came rushing to us. Judy with the store phone said she was calling the owner. CL grabbed the phone out of Judy's hand and was running in circles waiting for the call to go through. Then Katie's phone rang and, "Don't go anywhere, you," she purred to me. Katie answered the phone while looking at CL dead in the eyes. "Yeah, I'm the manager and I'm the owner. And yeah, this is my husband, and you know what? I don't want your business. I don't want you in my store. And I don't want to sell you anything, and I don't want your money. I do ban and I will ban anyone and everyone who is rude to one of my employees, and you are banned. You will leave or I will call the police and have you arrested for accosting my husband. And oh yeah, he gets an employee discount because I'm the owner and I can give that discount to anyone I choose." But oh, the CL was having none of it. "Oh, this is BS. You just called her cell. I want the owner and I want the owner here now." Katie looked at Judy and asked, "Have you called them yet?" "Yeah," Judy said, "they are on their way." A minute went by with the CL stomping on the ground when 2 of our local officers came around the end aisle. Both officers knew Katie and Judy as they often got stuff from their wives on the way home from their shift, and so they rushed the CL just as she threw the phone at me, hitting me in the chest. Both of the police officers were of the family pack variety and stood well over 6 foot. They manhandled the CL pretty easily and got handcuffs on her. One took her outside and Katie told the other that she just wanted her trespassed, and knowing my wife like everybody in town does, they did not even ask me if I wanted to press charges. Katie was the boss and what she says goes. I took Katie around the waist and said, "You can be quite the vixen when you want to be, can't you?" She looked at me with soft eyes and said, "Nobody messes with my husband except me, and in my own store to boot." Note, Katie and I have been married since she was 20-something and I was 40-something. It was not love at first sight thing, it was a gradual meeting of the minds and meeting of the hearts. We were neighbors and just saw each other often, and then we started having drinks at each other's houses until we finally kissed. It was that first kiss that got the snowball rolling down the hill, and a year later we were married. Her family was not really happy with her marrying an older man, and they let us know it at every opportunity, so we moved to a different town in a faraway state. My family had thought that I had lost my mind, and it was a relief to be so far away from them too. I had never married up to that point, and while it is hard to explain, after that first kiss we just knew right then and there that we would one day we'd be married and began to plan for it. I had saved up quite a bit of money from my paintings and we both worked, me at a forge and her in retail. I sold my house and that left us with a nice little nest egg, so that when the store went on the market, Katie jumped at it and she's been running that store for over a decade now. Her income was enough that I could quit the forge and paint full-time and be a house husband for our 2 kids who are now both out of high school. Our marriage now is stronger than it ever has been, and our oldest is planning her own wedding. My wife has a number of stories about Karens and chats in the wild, and I might write up some of those in the future if folks like this. And yeah, Ripe Stars, it definitely sounds like OP's wife is an absolute badass, and I for sure would appreciate it if my wife or my girlfriend or whatever would make so much money that I could be a stay-at-home dad or something. I would have nothing against that, let me tell you. Although, then again, I mean technically I already work from home, so it's not really like I have to go to the office every day or something. And the next one is titled, "My boyfriend organized a sting operation against a guy who scammed his sister." This is a pretty long story, but it is also pretty crazy. Fernando, fake name, 23, is my boyfriend. He has a sister, Luisa, fake name 26, who lives in Bogota, Colombia. Luisa and her baby girl live in quite an impoverished part of town, about 2 hours with public transport from the city center. Recently, Luisa and the father of her child decided to buy a plot of land with the hope of eventually building a house for themselves. They talked to this estate agent and paid him almost all of their savings in cash. Fernando told me it is not uncommon for more impoverished people in Colombia not to use banks or have bank accounts. After they paid him the money, the guy stopped replying to their calls or messages and started ghosting them, because of which they started digging into him and discovered that this guy has loads of fake profiles on Facebook and lots of properties and plots of land that he is claiming are his to sell. They felt hopeless after discovering this. It dawned on them that they lost a ton of money, all their savings. This was their hope at a fresh start. Hearing this, Fernando told her that he would help them out. He took an old unused Facebook profile he had and changed the name on it. By replacing his profile picture, he made himself look like new money, profile picture in front of a pool, a big house and fancy cars in the background. He also bought a new SIM card and got in touch with this guy. He pretended to be interested in purchasing a property and they agreed to meet. Fernando told me the guy was quite trusting and naive himself, buying all of Fernando's BS about his wealth and his desire to buy a house. They agreed on a property Fernando was to put a deposit on, and so Fernando asked for his bank account to make the transaction. The guy was like, "I'm having troubles with the bank, I would much rather we do this with cash." So Fernando told him he could only give him a few thousand through cash and not the full amount. They had agreed to meet yesterday in front of his letting agency. Instead, Fernando called the police and he arranged that they would be nearby with his sister and her partner. Just in case, Fernando put some heavy branches in his backpack, giving the illusion that it had a lot of cash inside. On the day, Fernando told the guy, "I'm here, but I cannot see you. Send me your live location." So the other guy did, which Fernando forwarded to his sister, who was with the police at that time. As the guy was talking to Fernando on the phone, the police and his sister could hear his every word. Fernando finally met the conman outside the agency, who was nervously looking around to make sure they were alone. It was at that moment that the police jumped in and caught him. They discovered 9 fake IDs on him, as well as hundreds of pages of counterfeit property ownership similar to the ones that Fernando's sister Luisa was given. As they were arresting him, he tried to plead and even attempted to bribe the police, who luckily wasn't having any of it that day. We don't know yet if this story will have a happy ending. Luisa does not have a whole lot of evidence regarding the cash transaction and is unlikely to get the cash back through the court system. I am proud beyond words of my boyfriend basically organizing a sting operation, but it breaks my heart that Luisa and her daughter have been conned off of a fresh start. So, have vengeance. Well guys, and even though it is not sure whether or not Luisa will get her money back, I would still say that this is definitely a kind of happy ending, because the bad guy did indeed get caught. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.